hearing before the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission in a cause docketed before the Commission as cause number 45330 Tdsic 10, captioned as Verified Petition of Northern Indiana Public Service Company, LLC, for 1, approval of an adjustment to its gas service rates through its transmission, distribution, and storage system improvement charge, or Tdsic, rate schedule. 2, authority to defer 20% of approved capital expenditures and Tdsic costs for recovery in petitioner's next general rate case. And 3, approval of petitioner's updated 2020 to 2025 Tdsic plan, including actual and proposed estimated capital expenditures and Tdsic costs that exceed the approved amounts in cause number 45330 Tdsic 9, all pursuant to Indiana Code Section 8-1-39-9. Notice of time and place of this hearing was given as provided by law by publication in Marion County's Indianapolis Star on January 15th, 2026, and in Lake County's Post-Tribune on January 13th, 2026, and Northwest Indiana Times on January 15, 2026. These are newspapers of general circulation, and these publications were made at least 10 days prior to the date of this evidentiary hearing. The proofs of publication of these notices have been received by the Commission and are now incorporated into the record of this cause by reference and placed in the official files. Notice has also been given to the Indiana Office of Utility Consumer Counselor and other interested parties. May we please have appearances for the petitioner?
On behalf of the petitioner, the Northern Indiana Public Service Company, LLC, please accept the appearances of Michelle Cox and Tiffany Murray.
Thank you, Ms. Cox, Ms. Murray. And for the public?
Thank you, Your Honor. On behalf of the Indiana Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, Philip A. Casey, Interim General Counsel, 115 West Washington Street, Suite 1500 South, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. We'll go ahead and swear in the witnesses that we have here who the Commission has questions for. Will those who are testifying and know themselves to be witnesses in this cause please raise your right hand and be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the evidence you will give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Affirmatives? All right. Petitioner, it's your case.
Thank you, Your Honor. With the two witnesses being called to the stand, we'd like to just offer the exhibits of the excused witnesses, if we may first.
Please.
Thank you. Petitioner offers exhibit number 2, the verified direct testimony of Thomas P. Harmon, including attachment 2A. Petitioner's exhibit 4, the public version of the verified direct testimony of Ryan Hutnick, including the redacted attachment 4A, and exhibit 4C, the confidential attachment 4A to the verified direct testimony of Mr. Hutnick.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Mr. Casey, any objections from the public?
No objection, Your Honor.
And the public waves cross.
That's correct.
Thank you. Petitioner's exhibits 2, 4, and 4C, inclusive of attachments, are admitted into the record. Petitioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray.
Nipsco calls Greg Burning to the stand.
Can you hear me okay? Thank you.
Mr. Burning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you please state your name and your business address?
My name is Greg Burning. My business address is 150 West Market Street, Suite 600, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Nipsco, that's Northern Indiana Public Service Company, LLC. I am a manager of regulatory policy.
On the table there with you, do you have Petitioner's Exhibit 1 and Petitioner's Exhibit number 1C?
I have exhibit number 1. I do believe exhibit number 1C is in here as well, although I don't see it labeled.
Check that envelope.
Exhibit number 1C.
Excellent. Together, Mr. Burning, do those exhibits constitute your pre-filed direct testimony in this cause?
Yes, they do.
Do you have any corrections to that pre-filed testimony?
I do not.
Do you adopt Petitioner's Exhibit 1 and 1C as your direct testimony in this cause?
I do.
Your Honor, at this time, Nipsco would offer Petitioner's Exhibit 1 and 1C.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Does the public have any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Thank you. The petitioner's exhibits 1 and 1C are admitted into the record. Does the public have any cross-examination?
Withhold at this time, pending the benches cross.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. The commission has questions for the witness, and I want to turn it over to Commissioner Swinger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Burning.
Good afternoon.
As you may know, we have 3 totally new commissioners on the tribunal, including myself and Commissioner Dyke, who joins us this afternoon as well. I've had experience with Tdsic cases before, but not really down at the granular level. So I was hoping to kind of broaden my horizons in that respect with some questions this afternoon. And I certainly don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence with the questions I have, but again, trying to get a good granular understanding for myself and for any interested stakeholders that may tune in either now or later on to the recording of the hearing. So starting at the beginning of your testimony, you've been with Nipsco for about 5 years, is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
And so you were not with the company when the 2020-2025 plan was considered and approved?
That is correct. I did not begin my employment until early 2021.
And how long since then have you been involved with the implementation of the gas Tdsic plan, the trackers, and the updates that have ensued?
I've been the witness since our gas Tdsic 8 tracker filing. So, that was a little over a year ago.
Okay. I'd like to turn to page 5 in your direct testimony. And at the top of the page, you have the answer to question number 8. And you indicate here that you have updated estimates for costs exceeding the amounts approved in Tdsic 9. In your professional opinion, how volatile or unpredictable would you say that these costs are?
Sure. From my experience, and only this being my third Tdsic filing, but there has been a fluctuation in our estimates, and while we have witness Carr here to really go into what makes up those fluctuations, I think as we move along in our plan, we have project estimates that are approved at the very beginning of a TDIS plan back in 2020, as you mentioned, and as we go along, those estimates get sharpened. We find out more about certain project scope. There can be economical factors that change things. So there is fluctuation from plan to plan.
Looking back at the other trackers you've been involved with, would you say the costs now are as volatile, more volatile, less volatile? How would you characterize that?
I don't know that there's been any more volatility that I can recall.
Fair enough. Have you been involved with the electric Tdsic tracker proceedings for Nipsco, or have you strictly been limited to gas?
I very much focus on the gas side of the business. So over a year ago, I'm familiar with the electric Tdsic, but I do not spend very much time at all on that process.
Okay. Moving along on pages 5 and 6, you have question and answer number 10. And I don't want to get into a lot of specifics, and certainly don't want to get into any of the confidential information in that attachment. But if you were to describe these updates to a layperson, for example, someone who doesn't work for Nipsco or in any involvement in utility regulation, but someone who just may be wondering, why is my bill going up and what does this have to do with that? How would you describe the projects generally?
Sure. I would say that, again, we were approved for a 6-year Tdsic plan by the commission, and we make updates every 6 months through these tracker filings. We have testimony from all our witnesses, such as myself, such as witness Carr, and the goal is you set out with a plan from the beginning, and as I mentioned, there is fluctuations. Things happen with those projects, and you get 4, 5, and 6 years out from an original plan, and there are going to be changes to project estimates, things like that. So I think, one of the main intentions of these tracker filings is for us to provide updates to stakeholders. We have pre-filing meetings with our stakeholders, both the industrial group and the OUCC, and to make sure, I think everyone's just on the same page generally about what our project costs look like with continuous updates, so it's kind of not in the dark, it's out in the light.
On Q&A number 11 on page 6, you say all the projects that are included for recovery here are for the purpose of safety, reliability, system modernization, or economic development. Could you expand a little bit on what you mean by safety and what that means for customers and for Nipsco's employees?
Sure, absolutely. The natural gas system is a complex underground system. We have transmission pipelines, distribution pipelines, we have storage facilities, we have a liquefied natural gas peaker facility. There is a lot of infrastructure, and that needs to be maintained. And so for safety purposes, natural gas is a volatile fuel, and all of that equipment on our system that has been installed over years and years that Nipsco has been in service up in northern Indiana territory, it's important that we maintain that to prevent any safety issues that that could arise. And there's lots of different work that we do with the PSD here in the state, as well as PHMSA at the federal level, to make sure that we are complying with rules and that our system is as safe as possible.
And I think when you mention reliability and system modernization, it all kind of goes hand in hand with that. But what about economic development? What impact does this have there?
So I'll just mention quickly, I'm not an expert in our rural gas extensions project, but that is, I think, sort of a form of economic development to where we are, trying to expand our system into more of the rural areas of the state. So we make sure that people in those areas can have access to natural gas that otherwise would have not. And then I also mention later in my testimony just one specific example, the Kokomo project, which was completed before and in service before I was in this role, but that was a part of this Tdsic plan. So that is just an example of an economic development project.
What steps has Nipsco taken to try to mitigate cost impacts in these projects?
So if we're looking at project-specific examples, I think I'd probably direct you more to witness Carr to talk through some of those things. I'll just say, you know, we always have affordability in mind, and I believe that's the reason for some of these updates. You'll see the projects, we've got, you know, a variety of variants in those projects in this plan update, so we're constantly keeping tabs on that, and I think we're looking at these projects in each update to make sure we're doing them in the most affordable way possible.
I appreciate your time and your answers and have nothing further at this time.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Erning. Appreciate it. All right, hold on, off the record. All right, going back on the record, and it is still your case.
Thank you,
Ms.
Your
Cox,
Honor.
sorry.
Nipsco would call witness Ryan Carr to the stand, please.
How's this?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Could you please state your name and business address for the record?
My name is Ryan Carr, and I work out of a Nipsco office in Valparaiso at 3001 Leonard Drive, 46383. Bring it up here a bit more.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Northern Indiana Public Service Company, LLC, and I'm a manager of gas Tdsic E&C.
Thank you. Mr. Carr, you have before you a copy of Petitioner's Exhibit Number 3,
I do.
the public version of your pre-filed verified direct testimony and attachments 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D, and 3E. The public version, yes, and 3E as well. You also have Petitioner's Exhibit 3C, the confidential pages to your verified direct testimony, and then confidential attachments 3D and E, do you not?
Yes, it appears I do.
Right. Do you have any corrections to these exhibits?
No.
Do you adopt Petitioner's Exhibit 3 and 3C as your sworn testimony in this cause?
I do.
At this time, we move to admit Petitioner's Exhibit 3 and 3C.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Does the public have any objection?
No objection.
Does the public have any cross-examination for the witness based on this testimony?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
The witness is available for questions from the commission. Thank you.
First, let's deal with this, these exhibits. Exhibit 3 and 3C are admitted into the record. And Commissioner Swinger.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Looking at your testimony, it looks as though you've been involved with the current Tdsic plan and trackers and updates from the outset. Is that correct?
Yes, for all of Gas Plan 2 and a little bit of Gas Plan 1.
A little bit of Gas Plan 1. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. I came over into the as a principal engineer to help out with kind of administering some of the projects in Gas Plan 1, and then eventually found my way into the major projects group. And then I was part of working with, at the time, Witness Bull to pull together the 2020 through 2025 plan. Yep, we'll get there real quick.
We're all getting used to the microphones in the room here. Trust me on that one. To what extent have you had involvement with the electric Tdsic plans for Nipsco?
Only the fact that I'm aware of them, but I have not been involved in electric Tdsic.
Fair enough. I'd like to go to page 22 of your direct testimony. And just a few questions regarding some things you touch on toward the end here. If you look at lines 23 and 24 on page 22, you say the proposals were carefully reviewed and found to be reasonable by internal subject matter experts. Can you elaborate for me a bit on how that process worked and who was involved?
Sure, so this is for our corrosion rectifiers, which tends to be a more specialized type of work. It's not with like our blanket crews or things like that. So there's usually only one or two contractors that perform this type of work. So once our internal Nipsco corrosion folks recognize that there's a failure of one of the rectifiers and it needs to be replaced, we typically receive quotes from one of the specialized contractors that we have. We compare that quote to previous equipment that we've replaced, and then we also rely on our internal folks who do corrosion day in and day out to make sure that they also agree that the prices seem reasonable.
Are these the same folks that have been involved with this from the beginning of the 2020-2025 plan?
Mostly. I mean, there's turnover in every department, but I would say that in general, that's been a pretty stable one.
If you look at the other projects that you describe here on the next few pages, without getting into a lot of detail, how has the oversight been on those in terms of internal staffing and contractors? Has it been as consistent as what we just talked about, or how would you describe that?
Sure. So rectifiers are a little different because we have only one or two specialized contractors. Something like the Cleveland Cliffs, that's more of a large project that goes out to large pipeline contractors. So that usually goes through a formal bid process where we put out a scope and RFP, we review the bids, look for exceptions, and then eventually award it. As far as controls, then as it executes, we have internal cost engineers, we have schedulers, we have inspectors. We have construction managers that are out there daily and making sure that the work is being performed as expected, and that we're not doing more than we should or less than we should for the price that we're paying.
On page 24, you talk more about Cleveland Cliffs, Burns Harbor, and use the phrase delayed engineering on line 19. Can you give me a little more insight into what you mean there?
Sure. Cleveland Cliffs, up in that area, as you can imagine, is very industrialized. A lot of those plants are almost like their own little cities. So trying to figure out an acceptable parcel of land, one to even just fit it physically, no matter who owns it, but also to go through land rights, existing easements, underground utilities that are not ours that may be there. Figuring out the best way to put it in an area that it's both accessible to us and the customer as well can be very challenging. It took, I think, roughly 18 months before we were able to find an acceptable parcel for both parties. And then at that point, we could progress engineering further because you can't really engineer something fully until you know what kind of footprint you have.
Along the same vein, on page 25, looking at lines 7 through 9, you refer to a different project, a purification system, I believe?
Yes.
What's that about?
Sure, that's part of our liquefied natural gas process. So whenever we are liquefying or evaporating, I'm not an expert on this, but there is the chance to either have moisture that could need to be removed, basically make the gas acceptable to be put back into the system itself.
And you refer here to an unexpected change in scope. What does that mean?
Yes, so in this case, we had a section of pipe that needed to be replaced. It was covered with insulation, and we needed to tie into it in 2 points. So as we were pulling back the insulation and seeing the existing pipe, it was noticed that it was more corroded than expected and not acceptable for a tie-in location. So we had to keep moving basically in each direction, exposing it longer and longer to find acceptable pipe.
Could that have been forecast with greater accuracy, either a previous tracker or in the initial plan?
I don't believe so. This is literally, we have to get eyes on it, and I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to kind of tear down part of your facility ahead of time, to get a more accurate estimate when it may not be needed.
I want to turn to attachment 3A, which is titled Execution of the 2020-2025 Plan. And your first header is Project Management Processes. About midway through that first paragraph, you say, during the design and planning phase, a gate process is followed with stakeholder involvement. What exactly is a gate process?
Sure. So the easiest way to think about that is when we go through our engineering design, we typically have an initial very high-level scope. I need a new reg station here. Then we bring in our stakeholders, which could be our operations group. Potentially, it could be information from the customer themselves. Could be, again, our land, our corrosion. And we get kind of our hands around what that scope's going to need to look like. At that point, we typically engage either an internal or a third-party engineering firm, and we start engineering the solution to that problem. That usually goes through a 30% design, a 60% design, and a 90% design. And those are the gates at which we bring back the stakeholders to review, how we've progressed. Is this still the right solution? Did we miss anything? And we move on before we get ready and have drawings that are ready to construct.
And who are the stakeholders we're referring to?
It's project dependent on what's happening. So if it's at our LNG plant, we have a lot of our LNG operations folks there. If it's a pipeline or a reg station, we have a lot of our metering and regulator station folks there, in addition to our design engineers that do a little bit of everything. And then our specialized groups depending on the needs. So our corrosion groups, our instrument and communication groups, it's all just dependent on what the project itself is.
How is customer affordability considered in this
Sure.
stage?
Well, I think one of the primary ways that we get involved with customer affordability is to make sure that we're picking the right projects that increase safety and reliability for our customers, and then that we get the scope correct around it. There are problems to solve. There are equipment that has passed its life, but we want to find the right solution for it, not necessarily. We joke, a gold-plated solution for it. We don't necessarily need to go above and beyond if the need's not there. So scoping it correctly is the first step, and then the project controls that I mentioned earlier around scheduling and inspection, and weekly to monthly forecasting with our project managers. We keep an eye on how the project is progressing and how the spend is coming in.
A couple of pages later on attachment 3A, you have the header that says cost management process. In the third sentence there, you refer to a plan owner. How do you define that term?
Let me find that one. Oh, sure. So the plan owner is, in most cases, is usually myself. I do an additional check that when a work order is pulled and a project is assumed to be Tdsic, that approval then goes through me since I'm aware of the projects that are in the plan and approved. So I can do a double check that is indeed a project that should be in here. Most commonly, that's for rural extensions. So if it routes to me, I'll do a check to make sure that it's outside of a municipality or meets the criteria, along with Witness Hutnick, and then we either say, nope, that actually you made a mistake, you're one street over, or yes, this is indeed a Tdsic project.
And as I asked you a few moments ago with regard to this, how does customer affordability factor in?
Sure. So cost management, again, we have the cost engineers that are looking at the forecasts that are ongoing. As we progress through a project and either it may need some capital or it may be able to return some capital, we have our project change notifications where we basically have the project manager present, why this increase or decrease is needed or warranted, what other alternatives they've looked at, one way or the other, and then whether or not we do think it is, actually appropriate for the scope that we have in our plan in the first place.
What have you learned in implementing this plan that you might carry forward into the next plan that, as you know, is currently pending in a separate docket?
Sure. I think we've, as this plan has progressed, the major projects group themselves have matured quite a bit in really honing that project kind of scope and charter and those stage gates of the 30, 60, 90. We put a lot more rigor around those, and that's really paid off, on some of our larger projects. I think like our Nipsco and Etna 43, which are huge projects, came in under. We're getting better at controls around this. I think we're taking feedback from the OUCC as to what kind of details they'd like to see when we do provide a plan update. So I think those are the lessons around that I can think of off the top of my head.
How much weight do you give to the feedback you get from the OUCC and industrial customers?
I give it quite a bit of feedback. I've been in this job quite a while now with the plan. We talk to them at least every 6 months. I think one of the most valuable things that we have is some pretty open and fair communication between the parties. So I absolutely take their feedback, and I think they listen to us. We try to be as transparent as we can when we do have any kind of issue.
I appreciate your time and your answers, and don't have anything else at this moment.
Thank you.
Witness is excused. Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And back
Sorry.
to you, Ms. Cox.
Oh, thank you. Yes, plaintiff rest, thank you. Petitioner, excuse me.
Thank you. Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Your Honor. On behalf of the Indiana Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, we have 3 items of testimony to submit. Excuse me. Public Exhibit Number 1, the testimony of OUCC witness Moab Nuruldin. Public Exhibit Number 2, the redacted testimony of OUCC witness Jared J. Hoff. And Public Exhibit Number 2C, which is the confidential testimony of OUCC witness Jared J. Hoff.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. Does the petitioner have any objection?
No objection, and we waive cross-examination.
Thank you. Public's Exhibits 1, 2, and 2C are admitted into the record. Back to you.
That's all we have, Judge.
All right. I think that concludes everything. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.